Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. Japanese OEMs' resistance to switch to EVs could really hurt Japan as a country. Japan has already lost some huge export industries to South Korea and China, like semiconductors and home appliance. But it looks like they could also lose the automotive industry because of the stubbornness of Toyota and the other OEMs that are fighting against the transition to EVs. Mostly because they have been betting on the wrong horse for many years. But with the Japanese economy at a stagnation for 35 years, I don't think losing their automotive industry will help them very much. They risk a 14% drop in their GDP if it does not move swiftly towards producing electric vehicles, according to a new report by the Climate Group. So let's try to see why the Japanese automakers could really hurt the whole country's economy by betting on the wrong horse. And let's dive right in. Japan is the third largest automotive manufacturing nation in the world and boasts of one of the largest automotive markets, surpassed only in size by the United States and China. Japan is also the world's second largest car exporter, just behind Germany, supplying nearly 13% of passenger vehicle around the world in 2019. As such, the automotive industry is vital for the Japanese economy, constituting around 18.8% of all manufacturing in Japan, with cars and car products as the nation's largest exports. Japanese automotive manufacturers are also a major player in the global industry. Toyota is the world's largest automotive manufacturer by sales, with Honda at 4th and Nissan at 5th. Both Wada and Inoue knows that the Japanese economy is now regarded as one-legged due to its substantial reliance on the automotive sector. Until recently, the economy had three substantial pillars: semiconductors, home appliance, and the automotive vehicles. But Japan has lost its dominance in the first two sectors to competition from elsewhere, particularly South Korea, China, and Taiwan. The question of whether the Japanese automotive sector will just survive in the current global transition to zero-emission vehicles therefore cuts to the very heart of Japanese economy's strength and stability. And Japan might be a big economy that is doing okay, but the Japanese GDP in 1994 was $4.9 trillion. And the Japanese GDP in 2020 was $4.9 trillion. This is a country that grew up fast, and everyone thought it would become a bigger economy than the US. But it stopped growing in the 90s and has not been growing for 35 years. It doesn't even have inflation but deflation. And they have the oldest population in the world, and the birth rate is collapsing. So there's not going to be enough to take care of the old people in the future. So the Japanese economy has been struggling for many years, trying to kickstart its growth again. But it seems like Japan is stuck between a rock and a hard place. And now their automotive companies are unwilling to compete in the EV race we see going on right now. So Japan could lose their last big export leg. And this might not be enough to bankrupt the country, but it will hurt its GDP, and combined with all the other things that are going on in the country, this could end up being a big blow not just for Toyota and the other OEMs, but the big blow to the whole country, and could maybe lose as much as 14% of its GDP, according to the Climate Group. But why aren't all the Japanese automakers moving towards EVs? Well, it's because they have been betting on the wrong horse and are now hopelessly behind in the EV race. Toyota only just now released their first fully electric vehicle, but they had to recall them all again because the wheels might fall off. And even if they fix fix that, I don't think this EV will do very well overseas because it's pretty much inferior in every way compared to pretty much any other OEM's EV and does not charge very well in cold weather and it still costs $55,000. So the biggest automaker in the world is struggling just to make a decent EV. And we have seen what happens if you don't make a great EV, even in the US market where there is not as many options like in Europe and in China. Mazda only sold 8 MX-30s in all of July in the US. In March they sold 101, but since then sales decreased constantly to 78, 35, 23 and now 8 last month. Overall, Mazda sold 324 MX-30 so far this year and 500 in total since launch. That's really one of the smallest EV fleet ever for an 11-month period. And it's not because it's a bad build quality, because Mazda knows how to make cars and is known for that great build quality. And I have tested one myself and it's a very well-made little car. But when you are offering an EV that costs $33,000 before incentive and so on, with a range of 100 miles, that can charge with 50 kilowatt. Well, I stopped charging my Tesla when the charging speed get that low. So it's not given that if you make an EV, it will sell very well. Mazda has one, but their sales in the US are almost gone, even though EV sales are skyrocketing. This is why we see Toyota and Mitsubishi is lobbying against EVs and still think hydrogen has a place in the small vehicle market, even though big boys like Volkswagen, Ford, GM, Mercedes are all saying EVs are the future and they're going 100% in on electric vehicles. So even if Toyota and the other Japanese OEMs will succeed in convincing its government that hydrogen cars are also the future, they will pretty much stand alone and not be part of the global market. They are betting on the wrong horse, and let me show you why. Because it is not just Elon Musk and myself who think that hydrogen is just stupid. Many of the legacy automakers have tried but have looked at the science and found it just doesn't work very well and is too costly. Like Daimler, Mercedes-Benz has killed its program to develop passenger cars powered by hydrogen fuel cells. The company has been working on fuel cell vehicles for more than 30 years, chasing the dream of a zero-emission car that has a long driving range, 3 minutes fill-up time, and emits only water. In the end, the company concluded that building hydrogen cars was too costly, about double the expense of an equivalent battery electric vehicle that people still think is too expensive. But Daimler still continues to work on their hydrogen truck, even though Scania, one of the world's biggest truck manufacturers, has already worked on this for decades and has come to the conclusion that even for buses and semi-truck, Scania is betting on all electric and have dropped their hydrogen program because of the research they have done themselves. And also Herbert Diess, the now former CEO of Volkswagen, has also said that BEV is the clear way. Just look at the science. But also within the Volkswagen Group, Michael Steiner, research chief of Porsche, has said, we continue to examine it, but at the moment this technology is not suitable for Porsche. For one, the typical output of a stack is about 100 kilowatts. So if you want more power, you still need to include a large battery to provide peak output. That means you need more room for their installation. And of course, kind of need to build an EV anyway. But secondly, he says, the system overall energy efficiency is very poor because it takes a lot of electricity to split water into hydrogen, distribute it to fueling station, and convert it back to electricity. And this chart here is actually from Volkswagen Group themselves, showing just how inefficient and stupid hydrogen is. But we can also take a look on this chart if you like that one better. Or maybe you prefer this illustration. Yes, exactly. This is just stupid in my opinion. We make a lot of electricity to create hydrogen and we lose a lot of that energy making It's not a source making the hydrogen and storing it and transporting it and storing it again, and then we convert whatever is left to, yes, electricity. What we started with in the first place, for crying out loud. What a circus to just end up where we started, but only with 25 to 35% left of what we actually started with. With a fully electric vehicle, we end up using 70 to 90% of the electricity. And when we are talking about sustainable energy, the only hydrogen that meets the requirement will be the so-called green hydrogen. That is created with renewable energy. But because hydrogen efficiency is much lower, we need about twice the amount of renewables to make the green hydrogen work than what is needed to just run all cars on renewables themselves. This does not make sense. And hydrogen cars cost much more to fill up, and the whole infrastructure is much more expensive to put up and take a lot more time to put up. Tesla make a supercharging station in only 4 days, and the cars themselves cost at least twice as much as a BEV. And people are complaining about EVs still being too expensive. Well, good luck trying to sell you very expensive hydrogen cars outside Japan. And South Korea's Hyundai Motors, which actually make hydrogen cars, has decided to delay their launch of their upgrade hydrogen-powered Nexo SUV to 2024 due to issues with the fuel cell development. And probably also see the very big and strong demand there are for their EVs like the great Hyundai Ioniq 5. But not a very big demand for that very expensive hydrogen car, the Nexo, that we can actually buy here in Denmark. But it has a starting price that is almost 3 times as high as the Hyundai Kona electric car. It is almost twice as expensive as their very great Ioniq 5. And it only has a range of 666 kilometers, so only about 150 kilometers more range than their Ioniq 5. So instead of buying this very slow and boring hydrogen car that does a 0 to 100 kilometers in 9.2 seconds. No wonder they have a picture of the car being overtaken by a person running. But it has 666 kilometers of range. And if you're afraid of having range anxiety with a BEV, you will definitely have it with your hydrogen car. We only have 7 hydrogen stations in all of Denmark. And you can of course not start from home with a full tank as you can with a BEV. But a journalist here in Denmark did actually take the Nexo for a ride. And when it came to the hydrogen station in Aalborg, it didn't work. So he had to go back over an hour to get to the hydrogen station in Aarhus, so good thing he had enough in the tank, only to drive back up again to Aalborg and continue his journey. But instead of this nightmare of a car experience, for less money, and I repeat, less money, you can buy either the Tesla Model 3 or the Tesla Model Y, and you can pick whatever you want, like the performance version or the long-range version, because none of them are as expensive as this hydrogen Nexo car. And the Model 3 long range does have 602 kilometers of range, so almost the same kind of range as the hydrogen car. But the acceleration from 0 to 100 kilometers for the long-range Model 3 is just 4.4 seconds, so a much more fun car to drive. And only here in Denmark, we have over 3,500 charging stalls to choose from. And we can charge at home or down in the mall or at the hotels when you stay at those. And of course, the many Tesla superchargers and others that are located all over the country. I mean, come on. Who would ever choose an inferior car that costs more with no infrastructure that will take many years to just even get half decent? And we already have hydrogen station blowing up here in Europe, so no thanks. I will just stick with my less expensive but much better EV that I drive today all over Europe with ease. But even some Japanese automakers are waking up, like Honda is trying right now and has joined GM in a venture to make an affordable EV in the future. And Honda did quit making diesel cars and is putting hydrogen indefinitely on hold. So they see what's going on and don't want to be left behind, but I am afraid they might be too late to the party or will definitely become a much smaller automaker. So the Japanese automakers are very stubborn and don't want to switch to EV, but has kind of been forced to show what is your EV plan for the future. But they all have very small and disappointing targets, like Toyota that has said they will make 3.5 million electrified vehicles in 2030. So that includes their hydrogen cars and plug-in and all the others, so probably not going to be a lot of BEVs in there. And Toyota makes about 9.5 million cars a year, so only about 1/3 will be electrified and even fewer will be BEVs. And the rest in 2030 will be ICE cars. I personally don't think anyone has to more than 2030, with the trends we are seeing right now, to become a fully electric vehicle maker. And the problem with the Japanese automakers and Japan in general is they are drowning in their culture and traditions and rules, and these companies are very top driven and you have nothing to say if you are not a manager. The exact opposite of how it's done with Tesla. So the Japanese are not very fast at making these huge step change in their companies. That is something that takes years, if not decades. As Joe Justice has talked about, he is helping Toyota to become more agile, but to do so, they have created a whole new company under Toyota where they learn how to be agile, and then in maybe 9 years, they will try to implement it into Toyota. So we will probably not see any big or fast moves from Toyota within this decade. And I'm afraid if that's the case, it will be too late. It is not and has never been the big that eats the small. It's the fast that eats the slow. And the Japanese might have been the elite and the most agile ICE manufacturer of their time. But times are changing and faster than they are able to change, especially when they at the same time are wasting time and money on betting on the wrong horse. But the problem is they are not just putting their companies at jeopardy, they are putting the whole country's economy at jeopardy. If they fail and go bankrupt, Japan will lose the last big export leg, and their GDP might drop with 14%. They lost the semiconductors and the home appliance, but now it looks like they will lose the automotive as well. So this could be devastating for Japan, because the rising war on batteries is not something they're in as well. This is all China and South Korea, and China will probably get their payback from when the Japanese took the automotive industry by storm in the 70s and China were left behind. But now China is rising both in semiconductors, home appliance, batteries, and electric cars. I hope the Japanese automakers will wake up from their paradigm paralysis and see what is happening right now, and ask the Japanese government for help to make this switch happen faster, so they don't end up hurting their own country because of their stubbornness towards this technology. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.